Thousands of British steel jobs under threat as bosses in India meet to decide their fate. Port Talbot in South Wales is losing £1 million a day. Directors in Mumbai are deciding right now the future of 4,000 workers.
The tension in the town and the actual plant itself, it's unbelievable. Our lives are on a thread.
Also tonight, the hijacker with the fake suicide vest who terrified passengers and forced an Egyptian plane to divert.
As a boxer lies in a coma, the Eubanks on how they pray history won't repeat itself.
We are only in this business here to score points and win. We're not in this business to hospitalise people.
And going cold on buy-to-let amid fears that the market overheating.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale and Mark Austin.
Good evening. The future of the massive Port Talbot steel plant in South Wales and the thousands of people who work there hangs in the balance tonight. Thousands of miles away in the Indian city of Mumbai, the board of Tata Steel is discussing whether or not to mothball it or approve a rescue plan.
Hundreds of jobs have already been lost there, but closing the entire plant would devastate the local community. Our Wales correspondent Rupert Evelyn is in Port Talbot tonight. Rupert.
Well, 3,500 people are directly employed here, but the actual number said to be financially supported by these steelworks is around 25,000. A board-level decision is imminent in India this evening, and the effect of that could spell disaster for this community. It seems almost unimaginable, but the fear of closure is genuine. The threat to livelihoods palpable. And the reality of life after steel has been considered. But no one here is prepared to give up without a fight.
Save our steel.
Save our steel.
Save our steel.
The union video featuring steel workers and their families exemplifies the ground-level battle here. Like most of his family, Graham Rowland has spent his working life in the steel industry. A passionate advocate of his trade, like many, he fears the ultimate impact that Chinese production, low steel prices and meagre government assistance will have on his life.
The tension in the town and the actual plant itself, it's unbelievable. Our lives are on a thread, and we are concerned for not just ourselves but for the town and the surrounding areas. It's really worrying.
The fate of thousands of lives depends on a boardroom thousands of miles away in India. Tata is losing £1 million a day in South Wales, and tackling that loss requires a top-table decision. Tata Steel are currently deciding on the future of the Port Talbot site. It could close the plant completely, which employs 3,500 workers. Alternatively, bosses could agree a rescue plan. That's beyond the 750 jobs already lost. The third and final option would be to sell the site to another buyer. Whichever direction the board decide to turn, it will be based on what works for the company and not necessarily its workers. The impact of losing this site would be, well, it would be catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we would never put Talbot is struggling now and the surrounding areas. We're all in difficult times. We would never recover from this. It'd be like the valleys and the coal industry all over again.
The steelworks dominate the landscape and the livelihoods of those within it. But tonight anxiety consumes this place as thousands wait for a decision, the outcome of which could be devastating. Rupert Evelyn, ITV News, Port Talbot.
Well, our Deputy Political Editor Chris Shipp is at Westminster. Now, Chris, is there anything the government can do?
Well, Mary, there's been lots of warm words from the Business Minister, Anna Soubry, who's in charge of this particular problem today. She's been saying no stone will be left unturned, nothing is off the table. I've just had a very interesting conversation with a senior member of the government who tells me that some form of state ownership of Port Talbot has not been ruled out. Now, look, we don't expect Conservative governments to go about the place nationalising things. That's not in their DNA. But they are considering at least some form of state ownership of the plant there. Now, interestingly, they weren't considering this 6 months ago. That gives you some indication of the fall of this particular industry. In Scotland, the Scottish Government recently temporarily took ownership of 2 plants there, 2 steel plants, much smaller, of course, than Port Talbot, and then went and sold them on. But I think it's quite interesting the government is doing this because the Prime Minister has let it be known he does not want primary steelmaking ending on his watch. But whatever they choose to do will depend first on the decision that they make many thousands of miles from here in Mumbai.
OK, Chris Shipper, Westminster, thank you.
Now, a man who hijacked an Egypt Air jet and forced it to land in Cyprus was wearing a fake suicide belt, according to the authorities. Passengers, including some Britons, were taken hostage, but none of those on board was hurt. It's not yet clear what the hijackers' motives were. Cypriot authorities say it was not related to terrorism. Our Middle East correspondent Garrett Vincent has the latest.
It was with a slight stumble that a 59-year-old Egyptian man finally disembarked from Egypt Air flight MS-181. He was the last passenger to leave the aircraft, and he made his way down the steps and across the tarmac, away from the plane he hijacked. Saif al-Din Mustafa had gained control of the aircraft, wearing what he claimed was a suicide explosive belt. After he had forced the plane to land in Cyprus, the passengers were allowed off. They seemed remarkably calm, but the situation was sufficiently tense for one crew member to seek another escape route.
The reality is that we have a hijacker on board of a plane. We are not sure whether what he has is a true bomb or threat to the aircraft, but we are dealing with it as a real threat.
Flight MS-181 left Borg El Arab Airport near Alexandria just after dawn this morning. It was heading for the Egyptian capital, Cairo. But after the flight was hijacked, it diverted and landed at Larnaca Airport in Cyprus just before 6 o'clock GMT. Mustafa's journey began ordinarily enough. He's seen here going through airport security in Alexandria. But as the plane sat on the tarmac in Cyprus, with some of the passengers still on board, he began bizarre negotiations, demanding first to see his Cypriot ex-wife, and then seeking political asylum. In the end, he gave himself up, his threat made with an explosive belt that was faked.
In any case, it's not something which has to do with terrorism.
So Saif Mustafa turned out to be a harmless hijacker, but a few months after IS bombers killed everyone on board a Russian passenger plane which also took off from Egypt, his strange stunt raises further questions about the safety of Egypt's airlines and airports. Garrett Vincent, ITV News.
And it's emerged tonight that a man who had his picture taken on board with the hijacker is a health and safety auditor from Aberdeen. Ben Innes, seen here on the right, of course, posed for the photo whilst being held hostage. The 26-year-old, who's originally from Leeds, was one of the last remaining hostages to escape. There's more on his story at itv.com/news.
We're moving on to other news now. And a man has appeared in court charged with the murder of a shopkeeper in Glasgow.
Assad Shah was killed in an attack outside his shop last Thursday night. 32-year-old Tanvir Ahmed from Bradford made no plea at the hearing at Glasgow Sheriff Court today and was remanded in custody.
The boxer Chris Eubank Jr today praised a doctor for stopping his fight against Nick Blackwell because he feared the referee would not act. Blackwell has been in an induced coma since the British Championship bout on Saturday. Chris Eubank Sr said he was so concerned for Blackwell's safety, he told his son not to hit him in the head. Duncan Golistani has more.
With his opponent in a coma, today Chris Eubank Jr spoke of the shadow hanging over his victory. Once again, his dad at his side, as he was during Saturday's fight.
At the end of the day, no fighter wants to see the man after the fight in any type of serious condition.
It was after round 8 that Chris Eubank Sr could be heard urging his son to avoid Nick Blackwell's head. The punches clearly taking their toll on the 25-year-old.
If he doesn't stop it, then I don't know what to tell you, but I will tell you this.
Listen to this.
If he doesn't stop it, and you keep on beating him like this, 1, he's getting hurt. 2, if it goes to a decision, why hasn't the referee stopped the fight? I don't get why. So maybe you shouldn't leave it to the referee. But you're not going to take him out to the face, you're going to take him out to the body. Okay?
Were you seeing something in Nick Blackwell that worried you?
Yeah, well, he wasn't winning the fight. I didn't see him win a round, and Junior was hitting him with shots which were brutal shots. We are only in this business here to score points and win. We're not in this business to hospitalise people.
Eubank Sr speaks from experience. In 1991, his opponent Michael Watson was left with severe brain injuries. It led to safety improvements.
In the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, I have a former world champion here. He's been there, he's done that, he's experienced these same events in his lifetime. He can see things that I maybe cannot see. I decided that, okay, if my father's telling me this, then this is real.
But the neurosurgeon who operated on Michael Watson 25 years ago believes it should not have been left to the Eubanks to help Nick Blackwell.
I think in terms of Saturday's fight, there was an obvious period at the end of the 7th round when, if you were looking at it critically, you could perhaps have called that fight to a close.
The British Boxing Board of Control has said it is satisfied with the referee's decisions. Nick Blackwell remains in a medically induced coma. The Eubanks say there will be no celebrating until he is fully recovered. Duncan Golostani, ITV News.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News. 1 week on from the Brussels attacks, the latest on the hunt for the man in the hat.
Henderson takes towards Dyer!
And after victory over Germany, the latest from Wembley on England's road to the Euros. The stories and more after the break. Jonathan.
Welcome back. 1 week after the terror attacks in Brussels, tributes were paid in the Belgian capital today to the 35 people who were killed. The city is still on high alert, with a main suspect still on the run. The so-called man in white was spotted on CCTV pictures with 2 of the suicide bombers alongside him. From Brussels, Emma Murphy reports.
The tomb of the unknown soldier in Brussels honours the dead of a war long past. As dawn broke over the city today, it was those killed by a more recent enemy being remembered. The flowers and tributes are laid with a hope for peace, but there is a feeling the events of the past week and the response has damaged this country's standing, especially when the only person to be charged has now been released due to a lack of evidence. Sven Biskop is a Belgian security analyst and fears any small country would be overwhelmed by the scale of the threat.
My feeling is that this is as close to a war situation as Belgium has been in a very long time. And clearly important mistakes has been made. But I think by and large we do have a very professional intelligence service, but they don't have the scale and the means to deal with this alone.
A week on, the work to establish who was involved and who is still on the run continues. CCTV at Brussels Airport caught these 3 men on camera shortly before the bombings. The 2 in black are both known to have died. The attacker on the left named as Najim Lashrawi, whilst the man in the centre was identified as Ibrahim El Bakraoui. However, police are hunting for the man on the right. He is thought to be alive, though his identity is unknown. The attacker on the metro was Ibrahim's brother Khalid El Bakraoui. He also died, but what's not clear is if there was a second attacker with him. Meanwhile, in Molenbeek, where much of the investigation is centred, a text sent to hundreds of phones gave a glimpse of the ongoing attempts to radicalise. "My brothers, why not fight the Westerners? Make the right choice in your life," it said, to the disappointment but not shock of those seeking to combat radicalisation. The deputy mayor told me it was an attempt to further destabilise the community at a time of turbulence. Disturbingly, it's not the only message of its sort, and no one here expects it to be the last. In the last few minutes, there's been a press conference, and actually the death toll has been revised, and it's been revised down from 35 to 32. It seems that what's happened is that 3 of the dead who died in hospital had been counted as dying at the scene, and that explains that confusion. Of the dead, 17 from Belgium, 15 from other countries.
Emma, thank you very much indeed.
A former Tory MP has called on the Home Secretary Theresa May to consider her position after he was cleared of involvement in a VIP paedophile ring. Harvey Proctor says the failed police investigation has been disastrous for genuine victims of abuse.
Parents and children have been paying tribute to Summer Grant, who died at the weekend when the bouncy castle she was playing on blew away. Her head teacher in Harlow in Essex described the 7-year-old as an amazing girl who was full of kindness.
And the search continued today for a man who disappeared while kayaking in Surrey during Storm Katie. 56-year-old Grant Broster's boat capsized in the River Wey near Guildford yesterday. Onlookers said he had gone into the water to help his son.
The Bank of England is clamping down on buy-to-let mortgages over fears the housing market is becoming dangerously overheated. There's been a surge in sales over the past few weeks before new stamp duty charges come into force from April.
The bank will set new limits on the amount people can borrow. Ben Chapman reports from Birmingham, which is one of the biggest buy-to-let hotspots outside London.
Just a quick call regarding your rental inquiry. Let me take some details from you.
That property's gone now, I'm afraid.
It's been a busy few months for estate agents. Demand for houses is higher than at any time in the last 12 years. But increasingly, the properties that are selling are being bought to be let, as landlords try to avoid a tax increase on investment properties next month.
I'd probably say at the moment, I'd say about 50% of our buyers are buy-to-let. Normally, on average, it's more like 20%, so there's quite a big uplift on the buy-to-let.
And what is that doing to the market generally?
It's making the prices go up.
Harborne in Birmingham has become one of the most sought-after areas in the most sought-after city outside London for buy-to-let. But there are fears some landlords may be overstretching themselves. In 2010, around 85,000 buy-to-let mortgages were issued. Last year, that figure had risen to 250,000. Today, the Bank of England has proposed stricter rules. Banks will need to know if a landlord can pay if they can't rent out the property. Lenders will need to assess the risk of interest rate rises and do extra checks if a landlord has more than 4 properties. But Mushtaq Ismail, who recently bought his 6th house, says the proposals, together with tax rises, will simply deter people from becoming landlords.
It wasn't that easy anyway to get the mortgage. They still had to go through the whole process, yeah. And the higher the amount of mortgage you wanted, the more checks there were, So I don't know why they're bringing out all these extra checks,
You think people will be put off?
I think they will, yes.
People trying to buy their first house might welcome that, but with a fifth of people relying on private landlords, there's no sign of the buy-to-let bubble bursting anytime soon. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Birmingham.
And to find out more about the new rules on buy-to-let, go to our website. That's itv.com/news.
And finally, England's footballers take on the Netherlands at Wembley tonight, with the team on a high following that unexpected victory against Germany on Saturday.
Yes, the result and also the way the team played have raised expectations ahead of this summer's European Championships. From Wembley, here's our sports correspondent, Ian Payne.
On Wembley Way tonight, a replica of the European Championship trophy, and optimism is high about England's summer chances.
It's very optimistic, yes, yeah.
Why?
Well, they're in good form at the moment after the Germany game, so yeah, I'm hoping they're going to do well tonight.
And there's a new name on everyone's lips.
Jamie Vardy. Yeah, Jamie Vardy.
Not Rooney?
No.
Youth's the way forward for me.
Definitely?
Yeah, definitely.
And Rooney? And Rooney, should he play?
I'd rather not say about that.
Kept alive by Harry Kane, and that's 2-1.
Rooney didn't play in Berlin on Saturday night when Harry Kane...
With a speedy burst, and that's terrific from Vardy! Oh, what a goal!
And Jamie Vardy, and another new boy, Eric Dyer,
and towards Dyer!
saw England come back from 2-0 down to win 3-2 against the world champions. But would Roy Hodgson really leave Rooney out? Seasoned observers don't think so.
I see Rooney as off of the centre forward. I think he plays the perfect position for it. He can still score goals, and he is a leader. He's a leader on the pitch, and the more leaders we've got out there in the Euros, then the better.
Well, the thing to say about tonight's team, it'll be very different from the one that started against Germany. This is Roy Hodgson's last friendly before he picks his squad for the summer competition. But the team they're up against, well, they're not as good as they were. Holland came third in the 2014 World Cup, but they haven't even qualified for the Euros. So England remain optimistic of another win.
Ian, thank you very much indeed. And that game, England versus Holland, is live on ITV from 7:30 this evening.
And that is all for now. Tom Bradby's here after the football at 10:15 tonight.
But from all the team here, have a very good evening.
Bye-bye.